Stephen. I'm going to keep you up here too. You're not too freaked out. Thank you all for staying this morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order and to appoint as our secretary Anita Lisk, who needs no introduction. Her nickname is I Need a List. Do we need a motion for that, or is that just a done deal?
No.
It's an appointment, that's what I thought. And I'd like to also appoint our parliamentarian this year is Alex Slaughter. Alec, thank you for doing it this year very much. Parliamentarian, do we have a quorum?
Rector, according to Canon 11, Section 5 of the Canon of the Church, we have a quorum.
We have a quorum. That is good news. You have the agenda before you in the first pages of your annual report. Please take a look at the agenda. Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda? Is there a second? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? We have an agenda. You also have the minutes from the previous meeting on the following pages. Please take a minute to look over those. I Need a List does an amazing job every year with our minutes. Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes? Is there a second? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. The minutes have been adopted. Thank you, Anita. Nominating committee report. Dina Moore, our senior warden.
Thank you, Randy. The nominating committee had the great fortune this year of having a wonderful group of nominees from which to put forth a slate for the next vestry. We had over 42 people, and it was a delight to have to wade through so many wonderfully qualified, talented parishioners. We have 6 members whose terms are expiring this year, and we have one unexpired 1-year term. And the nominating committee would like to put forward the following people for nomination: Knox Hubert, Gloria Pravat.
Please stand when your name's called.
Knox Gloria, Jeff Sisk, Bobby Ukrop, Catherine West, and Norval Whitaker. And for our one unexpired term, we have the great good fortune of having Stephen Watts, who has served on the vestry for 3 years, but is willing to do one more year. He's been our junior warden for the last 2 years, and he's willing to serve one more year to fill the 1-year unexpired term. So Stephen, will you please stand up as well?
Do I hear any more nominations from the floor? Do I have a motion that we close nominations? Is there a second? All in favor of closing nominations, please say aye. Aye. My thanks to these folks who are willing to stand this year.
Many thanks to everyone who served on the nominating committee. We had a lot of people who dug in and did good work on that committee, and thanks also to the 6 outgoing members, actually now only 5. Jan Harris, Scott Hetzer, Monty McFadden, Noonie Rogers, and I'm finishing up as well. And Stephen standing for one more term, so thank you to all of those folks.
I will be talking a little bit more about each of them a little bit later, but their service for 3 years has been wonderful. You have a ballot in front of you. According to canon law, even though we are one of those parishes that does vestry nominations by slate, vestry elections by slate, it is canonical that we must fill out a ballot. So please take a moment and take one of the pencils out of the pew and fill out the ballot and pass it into the ushers whenever you can pass them down to the end of to the center of the aisle, and the ushers will pick those up. Thank you very much. Now we'll move right to our reports, and our first report is the Endowment Fund, and I'd like to introduce Lilo Ukrop, who is the Endowment Board President this year. Lilo, come on over to the pulpit. It's a little easier.
Ooh, that's intimidating. Good morning. I know everybody's glad to see the sun. I know I am. A little bit about the St. James's Endowment Fund for those that aren't as familiar with it. It was established by the Vestry in 1957. Its purpose is for the development, expansion, beautification, and improvement of the parish property and the expansion of the religious, charitable, and social work of the parish and community. Income from the endowment fund is available for capital needs of the church, outreach ministries, grants, and programs of the church, seed money for new ministries and special one-time projects, and other purposes that are specifically designated by donors whose gifts are included in the endowment fund. The total assets of the endowment funds are $4.2 million. You can go to the back of your blue, the page is not numbered, but it's toward the back if you want to see the details of these numbers I go through. But of the $4.2 million in our endowment today, these funds are allocated as follows. There's $3.6 million in the main endowment fund. There's $388,000 in the Anderson Horan Fund, or the Rector's Discretionary Fund. There's $190,000 in the Music Fund. The main endowment was up 13.4% for the year, partially due to growth in the markets and also from bequests of $38,000 and memorial gifts of under $17,000. In 2012, the endowment made the following distributions: $35,000 for transitional funding of the church's operation budget into the new building, which is just over half of the $65,000 that was authorized. $30,000 for a salary supplement for the Director of Stewardship, $10,000 to the Westminster Canterbury Fellowship Fund, $10,000 to the Virginia Seminary Chapel Construction Project, which is one of 5 gifts that will be made over 5 years on our $50,000 pledge to the Virginia Seminary Chapel, which you all may remember burned. We will be recognized with a plaque at the altar base in that chapel. $15,400 in parking deck expenses, and $18,000 in rent to 1 Monument Avenue parking. After 3 years of helping to fund the gap in the church's operating expenses for the new building, 2013 marks a transitional year when the endowment will help with capital and related expenses and no longer be needed to assist with operating expenses. The Vestry and the Endowment Board believe that this is a very appropriate use of endowment funds now and going forward. To that end, in 2013, the Endowment Board has authorized a contribution of $10,000 for expenses of the Cornerstone campaign and up to $64,500 on church capital projects, including replacement of the portico floor, new fire alarms and fire doors in the old buildings, and an HVAC maintenance contract for the sanctuary building. Finally, you are all aware of the Cornerstone Campaign's committee's efforts to raise $1 million for the endowment in celebration of 100 years in our sanctuary on West Franklin. To date, 32 pledges and gifts have been made to the Cornerstone Campaign for over $376,000. Of that total, we have received more than $328,000 in cash payments already. We will be recognizing all who contribute to the Cornerstone Campaign along with the Legacy Society's members at the June 2nd Centennial Celebration. At this point, I'd like to introduce the trustees of your endowment board. If you are here, please stand. Randy Hollerith, Dina Moore, and Stephen Watts, all ex officio. Ida Fahrenholt is the trustee elected by the Vestry. Wilson Trice, Massey Valentine, Berno Hamilton, Helen Kemp, and John Molster. Thank you.
Thank you, Lilo, very much. Our endowment is a crucial benefit to this church, and its longtime support of everything around St. James's has been phenomenal, and its continued growth and well-being is great. And my thanks to all those who have helped us raise $370,000 plus so far, and we have a ways to go to reach our $1 million goal, but it is very much worth it. Thank you. We have a unanimous vote. We have an election. My thanks to all those who've been willing to stand again. Now we will turn to Jay Jennings, who has been our finance chair this year and done a phenomenal job. And Jay will give us the 2012 year-end statement and a look at the 2013 budget.
Good morning. There is a written financial report towards the back of the annual report, both the narrative and a condensed version of our numbers. So if you want to follow along with the numbers, feel free to do so. 2012 marked another year of financial growth for St. James's, revealing the generosity of our parishioners. Revenues totaled $2,146,000, an increase of about $167,000 over 2011. That's an increase of about 8%. Of the revenues, about 88% come from stewardship gifts. Current year stewardship gifts increased about $83,000 in 2012, in addition to a $30,000 increase in stewardship gifts from prior years, late payments, if you will. Support from the endowment was included in the 2012 operating budget, as Lilo mentioned, for the third consecutive year as we work to grow the budget to accommodate the increased operating expenses of our new buildings. As Lilo mentioned, the endowment fund had offered up to $65,000 in support for 2012, of which the church ended up drawing $59,471. That doesn't quite jive with what Lilo showed in her report, as the $35,000 actually came in before the end of the calendar year, and we requested almost another $25,000 in early January to avoid showing a deficit for the year. While the year overall was marked by growth in gifts, at year end there was over $100,000 in outstanding pledge balances for 2012, the highest level in recent memory. While this is some concern, but based on our experience, a large portion of these outstanding pledge balances should be received in the next year. Overall, we're making steady progress toward the strategic plan goal to increase the annual budget by $500,000 from 2009 levels over 5 years. Total expenses for 2012, $2,146,000, an increase of nearly 8% over 2011 actual expenses. Total expenses were slightly under budget for the year, as staff did a good job of restraining expenditures late in the year when receipts lagged projections. The budget for 2012 provided resources for greater spending on personnel and higher operating costs for buildings and grounds. Importantly, last year's budget allowed for modest increases in staff salaries for the first time in 3 years. Mission and outreach disbursements increased 7% in 2012 as more funds were allocated to the Outreach Committee for Local Benevolences and to the Diocesan Pledge. Another financial highlight of 2012 was the retirement of the construction loan in February of last year. The highly successful Fan the Flame capital campaign has received about 96% of the $7.9 million in pledges for building Misha House and for certain improvements and renovations to the parish house. Additional collections on the Fan the Flame outstanding pledges are anticipated, and the Vestry has designated these funds toward near-term capital projects that cannot be accommodated in the operating budget. Now let's turn to 2013. The Vestry's adopted a 2013 budget of $2,211,000, which is 3% increase over 2012. The growth rate of expected revenues has moderated from that experienced in recent years. While the annual giving campaign received many pledges with healthy increases, the projection for total pledges for 2013 is $1.92 million, 3% rise over 2012 pledges. While the number of pledge units has dropped over the last 5 years, a positive trend has been a 20% increase in the average pledge since 2008. Average pledge is now just over $3,000. Thus, the total value of pledges has increased in recent years despite the difficult economy. The bulk of the spending increase for 2013 is planned for personnel expenses, as we're planning for a full year at current staffing levels. A priority of the Vestry this year was to allow for modest salary increases for the second consecutive year, a rarity for churches these days. Most other categories, including mission and outreach, allocated from the operating budget will be flat in 2013. Please note that our budget excludes gifts that are designated to specific ministries and missions, such as the annual Mardi Gras fundraiser that netted about $75,000 earmarked for missions last year. We do not have totals yet for Mardi Gras from this year. We're grateful to the Endowment Fund for again offering significant support, although this year the funding will be directed to capital improvements and maintenance of critical building systems. The Vestry believes that these requests for capital needs are consistent with the distribution policy of the Endowment Fund. Additionally, expenses of maintaining the parking deck and leasing parking space at 1 Monument Avenue are borne by the Endowment Fund, which frees up operating budget funds for other ministries. Finally, I want to express appreciation to the people who keep our financial operation running smoothly. Pekana Teal is our long-time bookkeeper and financial secretary. Chip Woodson, Director of Stewardship and Development, coordinates the annual giving campaign and our planned giving efforts, and will also be instrumental in the Cornerstone campaign. Kathy Hoffman and Ann Rawls have again served as our volunteer treasurers, and a team of dedicated volunteers comes in weekly to count the loose offerings. And finally, a huge thanks to Eleanor Engel and Charlie Whitaker for their tireless efforts in our annual giving campaign this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay, very much. Stephen, Junior Warden.
Good morning. There is a written junior warden's report in the annual report, and I hope you will take the time to review it. It describes the continued excellent work of our facilities manager, David Barnett, including the example of his remarkable response to the crash of our fire sprinkler system, our dry sprinkler system, which set off our fire alarms just as people were arriving for the opening event of Womankind. He also oversaw our project this past year to resurface, repair, and add a new structure to the playground with the help of a significant grant from the Wilbur Havens Foundation. We are also so fortunate now to have Laura Schuford join our staff in 2012 as facilities coordinator. While David keeps the facilities up and running, Laura manages the extensive number of large and small events, meetings, classes, and receptions that we host throughout the year. I'd hope to have her stand up and receive a round of applause from you. She, however, had volunteered for the nursery this morning, so she's right next door, which is typical of her performance. Although David and Laura are part-time, they combine to give us outstanding, virtually full-time service. The report also recognizes our sextons, led by our lead sexton, Doria Roan, who's also begun to provide some additional support on Wednesdays and Thursday nights. And I also wanted to mention, who's not mentioned there, Marvin Smith, who has provided additional help on those nights by being available to escort folks to their cars. We've had a very good response from those who've received his assistance. If you encounter any of these people, I hope you will express to them how much we appreciate their service. There's been mention of capital needs. I wanted to mention just a couple of things out of the report. The strategic plan includes the objective of working to increase our internal capital reserve fund by 50%. There have been no additions to the fund since 2005, and we set this as a goal for 2012. And we're able to develop a means to increase this reserve fund by $15,000, or a little over 17% this year, which is not enough, but it's a good start, and we're pleased to be able to do that. We also developed a new platform for beginning to accumulate funds for another capital item, which is the replacement of our shaky and obsolete audio system here in this room, which is another objective of the strategic plan. We will continue to monitor this and other basic infrastructure needs, such as HVAC, which are beginning to approach the end of their useful lives. As Lalo mentioned, the St. James's Endowment is a vital financial backstop as we address our capital requirements. And I add my voice to hers and others I expect you'll hear to encourage all of us to actively support the Cornerstone campaign for the endowment. Work continued in 2012 on our safety and security initiative, which I mentioned to you at our last meeting, and you'll be hearing, and there we had a report and recommendation to the Vestry in 2012, and you'll hear more about that in 2013. It has been such a privilege to work again during this past year with our stellar clergy, staff, and vestry, and I particularly want to express my thanks and my deep envy to the 5 vestry members who are rotating off this year. As always, it is so gratifying to have the opportunity to work regularly with Randy and observe and receive his strength and wisdom, and particularly in 2012 as he has carried an even heavier load than usual. Finally, what can I say about Dina, the titanium magnolia? Her absolutely unique combination of business sense and personal grace has applied to a range of vital issues in 2012, from the Children's Center to credit cards to closing the budget gap. And they have all of her attributes have made her, in 2012, precisely the right person in precisely the right place at precisely the right time. Thanks to her.
Thank you, Stephen, for that wonderful report, and what a great segue to turn it over to the titanium magnolia.
And that's my report. Thank you, Stephen, very much. You know, when I joined the Vestry 3 years ago, I felt that my professional background and experience made me well prepared to deal with the typical board-type matters. You know, things like, does the budget balance? Are our facilities in good working order? Are we delivering on our mission statement? What I was not prepared for was the reality of how the Holy Spirit infuses virtually everything that happens at St. James's. I mean, it was just astonishing to me. And I very quickly realized churches don't run like businesses. Thank goodness for that. In my 12 months as your senior warden, I've been privileged to sit beside Randy as he worked through matters large and small. I saw him pray before meetings and before making decisions, not as a formality, but as a sincere request that God guide our deliberations. I saw him exhibit great faith in the face of challenging circumstances, and we had some of those this year. And he always said that if we were quiet enough and if we were patient enough, the right answer would come. And in my experience, it always did. What a wonderful lesson for me, as patience is most definitely not my long suit. You can ask Chris and the boys about that. Fortunately for all of us, Randy is no exception in that faithfulness. All of our clergy, Anne, Carmen, Alex, Caroline, and Mark, and our talented and capable staff are examples of what it means to do God's work with cheerful hearts. Our vestry this year has been full of dedicated leaders who bring a myriad of talents to bear on behalf of St. James's. I'd particularly like to thank Jay Jennings, our finance chair, who has dug in a way that I venture to say few before him have, and he's done just yeoman's work on the financial side. And we also had vestry commission chairs who kept us on task, executing the things articulated in the 2010 strategic plan. And those commission chairs were Jan Harris, who led the worship commission, Monty McFadden, who led the service commission, Kendall Sibley, who led study, and Stephen Watts, who led foundation and also did an amazing amount of work as our junior warden. You know, senior warden gets the glory, but the work gets done at the junior warden level, and Stephen has been just terrific, and he's done it for 2 years, and silly, silly man said yes when we invited him to stay for another year. Of course, a lot of work was done by all of the other members of the vestry who served on various committees and subcommittees. Work's done by those who donate their time to manage the endowment, folks who are serving on the Centennial Committee, and just all of you who give so much of your time and your resources and your energy. I am truly in awe of all that we managed to do at St. James's. No parting report would be complete without a brief retrospective of the key things that happened in the past year. And those of you who have been here for a while know that we are always an active and dynamic parish, and 2012 was no exception. It's terrific to think about this year, we're in the middle of it, but this year being our centennial year on Franklin Street. This presents us with the ideal moment to celebrate our past, our present, and to plan for our shared future. And we're using this occasion as an opportunity to educate the parish about the importance of the St. James's Endowment and the vital role that it will play in the future in ensuring that St. James's can continue to change the lives it touches. Because that, after all, is our mission. We change lives. Many of you will hear something from the Centennial Committee if you haven't already. Please engage with them as we talk about how to build for the future. Then there are a few things that we did this year that I think continue to fulfill the vision articulated in the strategic plan. We wanted to expand the ways you can worship, and thanks to a generous donor, we have been able to sponsor our Jazz Mass, which takes place on Sunday evenings at 5. If you have not been, please make an effort to go. It is a unique way to worship and very spirit-filled. So try to find some time to come. I love it. Sometimes I go to church 2 times. Like, who believes it? I'll come back on Sunday evenings because it is so special. We've grown the opportunities and formats for fellowship for children, youth, and adults alike. We have continued the success of what the ECW is all about with the second annual Taste of St. James's. And the ECW had an inaugural ECW lecture series this year, which was just terrifically received. We have continued our investment in the Every Member's Ministry program. You all should have your Every Member's Ministry cards. Randy mentioned it today. It's an opportunity to help our parishioners claim their ministries. So that's a terrific gift. And I think we have continued to fulfill our commitment to being good stewards of our resources, whether they be people resources, financial resources, or buildings and grounds. We had a record-setting Mardi Gras event in 2012 and another extremely strong one just 10 days ago or so. And the funds raised during the 2012 Mardi Gras party allowed us to undertake 7 missions and involve more than 60 parishioners in leaving their homes to serve others. I went to Honduras this past year with my now 16-year-old son, and that was a life-changing experience. So again, if you have not had the benefit of experiencing the opportunity to go away to serve, it is a gift. This year we celebrated Kent Duffy, Richard Rumble, and Valerie Hubbard, all of whom moved on to continue their ministries elsewhere. And we were so blessed to be able to add Becky Page, Emily Thrower, and Russell Lawson to help us continue St. James's excellence in the areas of children's ministries, publications, and communications. And Laura Schufert has already been mentioned, but I have to mention her again. Her grace under pressure and her multitasking abilities are allowing us to do more things more often with more people, both St. Jamesers and others in the community within our expanded space. And the great gift that is the Misha House is only fully realized when we can open it up. And we are now able to do that thanks to Laura and thanks to David Barnett. And of course, with heavy hearts, we dealt with the transition in leadership at the Children's Center. That was a situation that for me personally was the most difficult personnel issue I have ever had to deal with, and it required a lot of prayer and a lot of very careful listening. I'm proud to report that as we stand here several months after that transition, the Children's Center has maintained a full enrollment and continues to employ wonderful teachers who stimulate and love the children who are in their care. And despite what we experienced, I feel very good about the health of the Children's Center, as well as where we are as a parish in the process of healing. So you can see it was not a year to rest on our laurels, but we don't know how to do that. We are doers. During a period of time in which churches have shrinking membership, shrinking budgets, we don't fall into that category. We have a growing and vibrant parish by any measure. Sunday attendance, baptisms, weddings, ministry and mission participation, you name it. We should not lose sight of how fortunate we are to be surrounded by so many like-minded people who want to serve God by serving others. I am a better person having spent 3 years on the vestry and this last year as your senior warden. Thank you.
Thanksgiving for your ministry, we have a little gift for you. Thank you, Dina, so much. It's been a joy and a pleasure to serve with her. She really is a great gift to this parish. And Stephen, I love it that you can't say no. Thank you, brother. Jesus said, "Everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on rock. The rain fell, the floods came, the wind blew, but it did not fall because it had been founded on rock." In this, our centennial year, it's been a great joy to step back and spend a little bit of time appreciating the history of our parish, the human foundation, if you will, that we are built upon. With the discovery of the 2 time capsules and the treasures they hold, it's been so much fun, and we've had a unique opportunity to see and touch the history bequeathed to us by our forefathers and mothers. It's been powerful for me to hold the prayer book of Joshua Peterkin, who served as rector all before and after and during the Civil War, to read his hand-bound sermons, which are incredibly long, and to to read the newspapers from the day and to see the pride with which our ancestors sacrificed and worked to build our church, first on 5th and Marshall and then right here on Franklin Street. We are here because of their legacy. And so on June 2nd, I look forward to celebrating the past 100 years in worship and song, and it seems fitting that we should place the historic artifacts back in the wall at that point and add some new things for the next 100 years. And in honor of our 100th anniversary, as you've heard several people speak about, to help to build our parish, we have been doing the Centennial campaign to raise $1 million for the endowment. I want to thank Kathy McGeehee for chairing this endeavor. And while this is a one-time campaign just during our centennial year, please know that we hope that pledges can be paid over 2 or 3 years if you would like. And it is great to know that we have raised so far over $370,000. As Dina mentioned, the most difficult thing we dealt with this past year was the admission by Geraldine Johnson that she had misappropriated $25,000 of Children's Center funds. Geraldine has been the mainstay of our Children's Center for more than 25 years. The center exists in no small measure because of her love for children and her desire to see all children, those most at risk, those with special needs, thrive and grow in a loving, Christian, and challenging academic setting. But while Geraldine is very much loved by this community and admired for her years of work, her poor choices made it impossible for the board of the center or for the vestry for her to continue in her position. And so, as you know, she resigned in October. At that time, she signed a promissory note to repay all the misappropriated funds. I'm pleased to report that through the gifts of supporters and friends, almost all of the misappropriated money has been returned to the Children's Center or pledged to be given in gift to the Children's Center. And I am so grateful this year to Margaret Valentine, the board chair of our Children's Center board, for all the incredible work that Margaret has done. Margaret has been incredibly faithful in the midst of a very, very difficult time in the life of the center. And I'd like to thank her for that. The entire board, the entire vestry remains committed to the center's success, and they are well underway in their search for a new executive director. And I hope that you will keep them in your prayers. As we move forward into this new year, we must always remember that our spiritual foundation rests in the good news of Jesus Christ. We are only living up to our mission to the extent to which we are serving and proclaiming Christ. That is what we're here for. Increasingly, we live in a culture that is indifferent to organized religion. Recent studies show that the number of Americans who claim no religious affiliation, has nearly doubled since 1990, from 8 to 15% of the population. Recent polls have found that the percentage of self-identified Christians has fallen 10 points since 1990, from 86% to 76%, while the percentage of people who claim they are unaffiliated with any particular faith has doubled in recent years, rising to 16%. Moreover, the number of people willing to describe themselves as atheist or agnostic has increased fourfold, from 1 million to almost 4 million. All sorts of people, even mature, faithful Christians, are finding conventional religion increasingly less satisfying, are attending church less regularly, and are longing for new expressions of spiritual community. As a result, we need to be increasingly creative and open to reaching people in new ways and in new places. Offerings like our Jazz Mass or our Dylan Mass or the Bluegrass Mass, increased mission and outreach programs, new and varied study groups, prayer groups, book clubs are intended to do some of that. Our world is changing rapidly, and the expression of our faith in this new world is changing as well. If we want to remain relevant and vibrant for the next 100 years, then we will have to be open to change while holding firmly to our foundation in Christ. My thanks to our outgoing Vestry members. I'd like you all to stand. Jan Harris, Scott Hetzer, Monty McFadden, Dina Moore, Noonie Rogers, even though he's coming back, Stephen Watts. Thank you all very much for your service. Finally, we wouldn't be anything without our staff members, and I want to name all of them if you'll just bear with me for a minute. First, I want to thank Mark and Virginia Whitmire, supported by Jean LaPierre, for their great gifts in our music department. Thank you, Mark and Virginia. Jean. Becky Page for the work she does with our children, and Nancy Warman and her passion for serving others and to help other people find ways to serve others. Emily Thrower and Russell Lawson in the communications office, Laura Shuford and David Barnett, as you've heard this morning, who take care of our buildings and the events that take place within them. My thanks to those four. Chip Woodson and Pekana Teal for the great job they do overseeing our finances as well as our stewardship and development efforts. Thank you, Chip. Where's Chip? And then Gina Young and Anita Lisk for keeping this place running. Thank you, Anita. And we are incredibly spoiled around here with clergy. Not only do we have 3 wonderful full-time clergy, but we're continue to be blessed by the gifts of retired clergy. And so I'm so grateful to be working with all these folks. They make my ministry richer, and they teach me something every day. Ann Dieter Lee, who's still in Florida with her folks, but doing well. Carmen Germino, Alex Riffey, Caroline Parkinson, and Mark Cooper. Thank you, God. I can't believe this is my 13th year as your rector, although when I look in the mirror at the gray hair, I can kind of believe it. It is still a joy and an honor and a privilege to serve here, and I thank you for the opportunity. Do we have other business not on the agenda? Then I move that the annual parish meeting be adjourned. Say aye.